Alexeï KOMOV va prendre la parole cette fois-ci. Alexeï KOMOV a 20 ans d'expérience dans le lobbying et la construction d'alliances, alors je vais reprendre les termes de Brian, d'une internationale conservatrice. Il est spécialiste en conseil stratégique, en finance, en marketing et en relations publiques. Il est co-auteur du livre « La réglementation boursière américaine et russe », paru en 1998. Alexeï KOMOV est aussi un infatigable globe-trotter qui parcourt le monde pour y donner des conférences sur la défense de la famille traditionnelle. Et il est également polyglotte puisqu'il parle couramment le russe, l'anglais, le français, l'espagnol, l'italien et l'allemand. Par contre, un peu décevant, il est marié et il n'est père que de 5 enfants. Il vient de Russie pour nous parler du renouveau russe au XXIe siècle, les grandes tendances. Merci beaucoup Alexeï.
Merci, bonjour Paris. Les derniers mots aujourd'hui sont réservés pour un russe, pour moi. Je suis très heureux. Je parle un petit peu français, mais si je parlerais français, je fais beaucoup de fautes. Je pense que je parlerai anglais parce que c'est probablement problématique pour parler de choses très compliquées en français. Mais, I will try to start.
Pourquoi pas en russe?
Russe?
Ah oui?
We have a very important date this year, 100 years anniversary of a Bolshevik revolution in Russia, and I think it's a good time to have some reflections and conclusions and lessons to learn from what has happened 100 years ago and what is the relevance to us today. And as you know, Russia has suffered a lot from this communist experiment over the 70 years. Some people treat it as the 70 years of Babylonian captivity under communism in Russia. And it was a truly international project. It was not a purely Russian creation, although it has taken place in Russia. But you know, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were not Russians. And it was an intellectual product of wider Western thinking. And this revolution, as modern-day color revolutions, also had its color. The color was red. And we have Leon Trotsky with 300 professional revolutionaries, so people who were trained to do revolution. They trained on a special boat from New York to do it, and Lenin traveled from Switzerland, so it was a really an important project. And one of key factors in this was also the approach to family. And Friedrich Engels, in one of his works, he has mentioned that a family is an oppressive institution that has no future in the bright communist future of tomorrow. And during the first years after 1917, many very liberal concepts were tested and implemented in Russia. For example, free love and having sex with everyone was very much promoted, and naked people would march on the streets of Soviet Russia, arguing against any old-fashioned prejudices. And we had this lady minister, Kollontai. She was promoting free love, etc. And one of the first laws of Bolsheviks was to decriminalize homosexuality, introduce easy divorce, and they were really promoting destruction of traditional family values. And many things that we see now happening in the West, here in France, at the United Nations level, were tested a long time ago, 100 years ago in Russia. And also the two main enemies of revolutionaries was the traditional family and Christianity. So before revolution in Russia, there was in 1917 there were around 100,000 churches in Russian Empire. And after 20 years of a very militant anti-church propaganda, there was only 100 churches left. Only 100. Many of them were destroyed and turned into some other things. Also, we had 1,200 monasteries, all of them were closed. And only in 1937, about 150,000 church-related people were arrested and 90,000 were killed only this year alone. And we have basically a miracle that after this very severe persecution of traditional values, after communism, in modern-day Russia in the last 30 years, we have a miracle. We have a revival of traditional values, traditional family values, of the churches. In former Soviet Union, we have rebuilt or opened 30,000 churches. And in Moscow only now, we have a special program to build 200 churches in the new residential areas. This trend is quite the opposite to what you have in the West, when many churches in the West are empty or turned into museums or cultural exhibition centers. In Russia, you know, they're in high demand. We keep building churches, and it's not only in Russia, it's in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Poland, and other countries of former Eastern Bloc. And also, it's quite amazing that Russia has become, in the recent years, on international arena, one of the defenders of traditional moral values. And also internally, we have passed several laws. For example, this famous law was passed that protects minors and children from aggressive homosexual propaganda. It was passed several months before Sochi Olympics that happened in 2014. And that's where this campaign to demonize Russia started. It was before any crisis in Ukraine that happened later. It was because of the LGBT lobby that is so powerful in the West. They started boycotting Russia, demonizing, and Barack Obama, Cameron, and other leaders, they boycotted Sochi Olympics. And I don't understand what is the connection, because Olympics is supposed to be about sports and health. And we know statistically that gay lifestyle is not healthy, just statistically. We know they suffer more from various diseases or suicide attempts or you know, psychological trauma, etc. for various reasons. And then also in Russia in recent years we have this law that gives something like 8,000 euros for the second child born in the family from the state. And for the third child born, Russian state gives a free land to the family. Also we have a very vast number of benefits. Also I enjoy it. For example, in Moscow, we don't have to pay for parking. So parking is free for large families. Anybody who has 3 families, 3 children or more, they're officially recognized as large family, and you have those benefits. So you park anywhere and then you don't pay. It's very convenient. Also, we have the right to receive, I think, once per month. Every large family in Russia has the right to go for free to Bolshoi Theater, and also to sauna for whatever reason. So they decided at least once per month they have to go. And it's also free. And the list of benefits is very extensive and large. Also, the number of abortions have decreased in Russia 5 times over the last 30 years. It is still quite high, but it was 4 million when Soviet Union collapsed, and now it's less than 700,000 per year. It's still a huge number for the population of about 150 people. But of course, yes, and at the United Nations, in the international arena, also Russia supports traditional values. This is good. But of course we have many problems in Russia. Russia is not paradise, we should not idealize. And for example, surrogate motherhood is legal in Russia. We want to change this, but this is still in our plans to do it. And also we have rather strong feminist lobbies, and George Soros had influential networks since the 90s, so there is still a fight. So we should not idealize the situation. But still, I wanted to give you those facts that mass media, CNNs and BBCs and Euronews of this world, they never tell you. And it's important to tell you what is really happening in Russia, because there is a very massive demonization, negative campaign against Russia. And I just wanted to share what we have. Also, if we come back to this reflections about 100 years anniversary of communist revolution, when Joseph Stalin, who was Georgian by the way, and a very influential figure for all Russians, we have many nationalities in Russia of course, and so Stalin has pushed out those radical revolutionaries who were implementing those sexual revolutionary ideas. He has pushed them out of the country, and the situation has normalized after Stalin, after Second World War, and it was more favorable somewhat to the families until the collapse of Soviet Union. But many of those radical revolutionaries, Trotsky and other type of people, they immigrated to the West, and having merged with European, American thinkers, they continued these revolutionary thoughts in the new historical conditions. And for example, there was this Italian communist, Antonio Gramsci, who said that in the new historical conditions, in order to advance the world revolution, we don't have to take control of political power up front like Bolsheviks did. He said rather we should undertake a long march through the institutions and take control of the mass media, culture, universities, Hollywood, and after we brainwash the minds of the new generations, political power will fall to us automatically. And this program was very much developed by the so-called Frankfurt School of Thought in Germany, and they made the fusion of neo-Marxism with neo-Freudism, these pansexualist ideas, and they came up with the ideological ground. They have prepared it in the 40s, 50s for the upcoming sexual revolution of the 60s, drugs revolution, feminism, and other things that we're witnessing today. So intellectuals like Marcuse, Adorno, Horkheimer, and others, they worked to develop this new revolutionary concept in the new conditions. And they have succeeded to a large extent. And as cultural Marxists suggested, today mass media, they control the minds of the people. There is a statistic that from the time a child is born, he or she, until they reach the age of 17, they consume in total more than 63,000 hours of mass media influence. Internet, television, Hollywood, movies, social networks. And all this time of mass media is 6 times more than the time that children spend in school. It's only 11,000 hours. And the mass media is 30 times more influential than parents. Because, on average, I was told that there is a statistic that, for example, average American father speaks only 8 minutes with his child per day, not more. Direct communication, not sitting quietly watching TV, but talking about something meaningful. So we see that mass media are the main educators. And this time is also 60 times more than the time that children spend at church. So we see that the mass media are the main educators of our children. And what kind of message are they trying to deliver? You know the answer. It's not so favorable to family values, it's not favorable to Christian values. And if we want to preserve this, we need to pay attention. And I want to tell you that right now we are preparing for a launch of the homeschooling curriculum in Russia. Actually, we already have people from 50 cities of Russia and 5 cities of Ukraine, Belarus, and other places. We are using the classical educational approach. It's family-centered, and parents educate their children at home. And we use the best American models. In America, there are 2.5 million homeschoolers, and they show consistently much better results, academically, socially, career-wise, etc. and we're using and adapting it to the Russian cultural conditions. And we think this is one of the longer-term solutions if we want to preserve the next generation. And by the way, we will hold a Pan-European Homeschooling and Freedom of Education Conference in Rome this May 19th. And we invite, if you are in May, please come to our event. It will be in the center of Rome, near Vatican. And on the 20th of May, there will be a big March for Life in Rome. So if you happen to be there, please come to us. And also next year, we will have in Moscow and in St. Petersburg, in 2 cities, a Global Home Education Conference. So in May of next year, so we welcome you to come. But most importantly, as Brian has mentioned, if you can come to Budapest, there will be a huge event, World Congress of Families there. And I'm representing World Congress of Families in Russia. And by the way, this is probably the largest international concept with people from more than 80 countries of the world who share one firm belief that natural family is the fundamental unit of society that should be protected. And despite our various religious affiliation or geography, because we're situated in all continents, so this is what unites us. So we're happy that we have this important platform. And so we see that actually in the last 30 years, the situation in the world has changed in terms of ideas. If 30 years ago, at the time of Ronald Reagan, America was saying that we cannot be defeated if we don't give up on God. So they were proclaiming that they want to preserve Christian traditional values. And Soviet Russia was the opposite. It was atheistic power. In the last 30 years, the situation has changed pretty dramatically. And we see that the Western countries and the United States, unfortunately under Obama, and Hillary Clinton also as a state secretary, they completely embarked on this spreading global LGBT gender social revolution. And Russia became the conservative force. So we see how situation has evolved. And we see that after 70 years of very tough times under communism, if Russia has managed and found the strength to turn around and come back to its roots, we hope and pray that this is also possible for you in the West. And we, as people of goodwill from East and West, should be together. And I think that Russian experience can teach you that almost anything is possible. So we encourage you to be strong, and helping each other, we can win. So thank you very much. That was a little Russian perspective, and vive la France, vive la famille.